The death of Matthew Perry, it's been investigated. It's still being investigated, and now it's being prosecuted as a criminal offense. The investigation now leading to the arrest and charges against Kenneth, forgive me on these names because they're kind of complicated, Iwamasa, the two doctors, Dr. Salvador Placencia and Dr. Mark Charvez. They were also involved in the supplying of the drug. The case also involved someone known as the Ketamine Queen, Jasveen Sangha. All these individuals, basically, from what we're understanding here in some of the texts and evidence that they found, conspiring, not necessarily to kill him, but to give him a lot of drugs, whatever he wants, at a very inflated cost as well. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor. What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, it seems like, according to the government, there is kind of this concerted effort that this operation that involves multiple folks to distribute ketamine, to make money, and consequences be damned. And that's sort of the tenor of some of these texts from some of the folks who have been charged. And so the prosecution is sort of clamping down on all of that. And it's my understanding that at least some of those folks have already pled guilty and may even turn into cooperating witnesses for the government.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's easy to look at this case, and it's not to discount the case by any means, but it's Matthew Perry. These sort of deaths happen all the time. People do get overdoses and whatnot, and the investigations certainly do not go to this depth in many cases. It's pretty much, well, it's another junkie and they're dead, and yeah, there's a dealer out there that did this. But obviously, they're taking a closer look at this one. I think probably because it's Matthew Perry, but I think also it might be able to make a bigger difference because of the attention that this case is going to get. What's your take on all of that and the level of investigation that they're putting onto this because of his celebrity status?
Yeah, it's a smart point, Tony, because we want, even-handed prosecution, generally speaking. We don't want anyone to be singled out, whereas others who did the same thing aren't prosecuted at all. But I think here that there is sort of a general societal interest in going hard on this case and trying to set an example, a precedent that perhaps future drug dealers might become aware of and think twice about what they're doing. Whereas if it was a case about, some addicted person in Denver, those drug dealers would likely never hear about it. It might not have the same deterrent effect.
With this, there's a lot of people that are going down. What is the likelihood that these people are only dealing to Matthew Perry?
I think very unlikely. It sounds like this was really a business. Really, it's kind of a conspiratorial ring for profit, according to the government,
Mhm.
where a number of folks are getting paid. And I can't imagine that Matthew Perry is their only client. There's been really an emergence of ketamine therapy. And some people say that it is really helpful for anxiety, depression, and some other things. But as with any pharmaceutical therapy, abuses can occur. And the government is saying that's what happened here.
What are the dangers with this? I mean, I know you're not a doctor, but are you seeing more of this in the legal system? Because I mean, ketamine. Yes, I agree. Some people say this is working for them as a therapy for everything from anxiety to depression to you name it. It's used as for something to help people, fall asleep, in surgery as an anesthetic and things of that nature. But now they're finding it useful in this. But with anything, if it's not being regulated in a hospital setting and you have your hands on enough of it, you can take more than the recommended dose, which is clearly what happened here. I mean, this you can get this by mail order in most states by doing an online visit with a doctor, and then they'll send you like a 30-day pack of capsules. And good luck. I mean, you're supposed to take one at a time, but not everybody does that. This seems like are we at the verge of a kind of an out of control epidemic with something like this that has such ease of getting people's hands on?
Time there is a new type of therapy like this, especially when the therapy has addictive components like ketamine, there's always the risk that things could get out of hand, especially if it's not closely monitored in a medical setting. Here we kind of have some who appear to be, medical cowboys sort of doing what they want. And there's the Ketamine Queen allegedly involved, and they're advising Matthew Perry's assistant allegedly on how to inject him to do this.
Mhm.
That's not like any sort of doctor's treatment that I've ever seen. And I think we really run the risk of these things recurring if there is not adequate regulation imposed.
Yeah, I mean, how does this differ? I mean, obviously, there's more of a therapeutic aspect to it, but I mean, someone could go get plowed on alcohol and pass out in the hot tub. I think that was the initial thought. I think a lot of people probably had about Matthew Perry is he got really drunk and passed out. But this is, I mean, this is something that is also used recreationally like that sometimes, and it appears maybe he was kind of dabbling in that area as well as he continued to battle his addiction. Is this something? I mean, there are some regulations on it to a certain extent, but I mean, there's not a ton of studies on it either. In great depth that show long-term effects. We don't know long-term effects. From what I talked to a doctor yesterday about this, a psychotherapist about this, and in her opinion was it's still out there. We just don't know the answer to the long-term, or if this is kind of a quick temporary fix.
Yeah, my understanding is a significant portion of the support for ketamine therapy is anecdotal. It's people saying that it's helping them, and perhaps that's the case. But one thing that doctors, I think, neglected to take into consideration, it appears, is Matthew Perry's vulnerability to addiction, his susceptibility to addiction. As a doctor, anytime you're dealing with someone like that, you have to keep that in mind and closely monitor the treatment regimen. It harkens back to kind of the early days of opioid uh, uh, prescriptions, and if a person was formerly an alcoholic or addicted to heroin or something like that, you got to be darn careful if you're going to prescribe a potentially addictive substance that can be lethal. And in this case, it was.
Is there going to be stiffer penalties on this than would be if it's just a dealer and like, hey, here's your stuff? Because we see them almost, I don't want to say necessarily conspiring, but they're discussing Matthew Perry behind the scenes in text, going, I don't have the exact quotes in front of me, but essentially that fool. He's an idiot and he'll pay whatever and he'll take whatever. And I mean, it shows like you're doing something very wrong, and you're not just like, oh, he's got this prescription and we're going to give it to him.
Yeah, there's certainly a difference between like a doctor prescribing painkillers, for example, prescribe them as they should, and unfortunately the client took more and something terrible happened, as compared to what appears to be kind of this distribution ring for profit, these callous text messages that show kind of a disregard for the client, which is inconsistent with the Hippocratic oath that these doctors are under. And I think further, whether it's fair or not, doctors are sometimes held to a higher standard. They should
Yeah,
have known better. They have a doctorate degree,
yeah.
and they didn't do anything. And that's different than just a cocaine dealer on the street.
No, without a doubt. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.